Memento Mori, remember, you will die. A truly beautiful Latin phrase that to me has so much meaning. No matter who you are, we will all one day face death. And I like the idea that if all humans can never be equal, we're at least tied down by mortality. And that's the beautiful thing about life. Even if death is a scary thought, at least we all know that we will find peace in death. And I've always loved when a piece of media captures the themes of life and death, whether it's the theme of death and rebirth in Persona 3, the struggle to live and make a name for yourself in Cyberpunk, or even the personification of death itself in Cyneris Somnia. I believe there are many games out there that represent life and death in their own way, but none have quite captured the beauty and sorrow of death the same way Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has. In today's review, we'll be diving deep into the expedition to break the cycle and to answer the question, should you play Clair Obscur Expedition 33? Well, let's get into the details for those who come after.
Clair obscur, trouble de rature, trouvera effet. Clair obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Clair obscur, trouble de rature, trouvera effet. Clair obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle.
Let's start off with a quick plot breakdown. Expedition 33 is set in a fictional reimagining of our real-life world, specifically set in France. We start on the island of Lumiere, where a yearly gamage takes place, where everyone of a certain age that counts down yearly is completely erased from reality. In other words, the clock starts at age 100, and every year that clock ticks down, in a cycle. If you're the age that is displayed by the paintress, then you will disappear. You will fade into nothing and die. After the 34th gamage, you set out on your journey across the continent to kill the paintress and put an end to the cycle. And this isn't a new thing either. Each year there's a new expedition sent out named after the current year that is being counted down, and their goal is to stop the paintress and end the cycle. This year being Expedition 33, your very own expedition. And whilst that may be a very simple explanation of the basic plot, I will not be speaking about it any further as I don't want to spoil any part of the experience, and I highly recommend you go watch a playthrough of the game or go buy the game afterwards if you have that option. Obviously, I know not everyone has modern consoles to play it on or a PC, and not everyone has the money, even if it's a cheaper option for newer games. I know not everyone has that option, so honestly, after this review, either go play the game yourself or go watch a playthrough. I highly recommend it, you will not regret it. So instead, let's get into my thoughts about the story without spoiling anything, and all footage will be used from the prologue to Act 1, so I won't spoil anything including plot points and what characters will appear later on in the game, but there may be some clips that are from later acts, but these will only be optional content showcases, and I will only showcase Act 1 characters in this later part of the footage. This is so I can speak about the later gameplay loop, whilst keeping things completely spoiler-free and only showcasing Act 1 characters. Starting off with the prologue was pure perfection and truly beautiful. It gets right into it and hits you right in the feelings, and also subtly introduces you to some of the mechanics, disguising them as little festival mini-games. The ending to the prologue was truly beautiful, and can honestly make a grown man cry. It perfectly displays the beauty and sorrow of the gamages and how it affects the ones left behind each year. I also like the fact that there's a bunch of side tasks in the prologue that are optional, but come with some pretty good starter rewards when you actually get into the game and start Act 1. Act 1 starts off with a shocking bang and ends with an even more shocking, painful bang. This game doesn't hold your hand, it doesn't hold back. It will tear your heart out, shatter it into a million pieces, then make you pick up all of those pieces, glue them all back together, and then puts your heart straight back into your chest, pats you on the back, and puts a tiny plaster on the wound. The storytelling in this game is beautiful, emotional, epic, terrifying, but most importantly, it has meaning, and the way they convey that meaning is perfect. The first act was truly the best in the whole entire game. It makes you absolutely love the main character and his companions, and it makes you really want them to survive the expedition, and it makes you wish that they get to live the rest of their lives without the fear and the pain of the gamages and the loss that comes with it. I also love the way they balance wholesome moments and emotional moments. It never feels like they're trying to force the player into constant suffering. There are some happy moments that just make those emotional ones hit even harder. And they also added some humor, and man, let me tell you, the devs have a good sense of humor. I mean, I'll just let the scene play out for you.
Get out of my way!
Jeez, un pochino paparino.
No, it's just the... It's the password.
Rico Femicola, Gorgranda Maribombino, Passwordito, Gomiku Rapito Sava.
Act 2 is also brilliant. I'd say it has a little bit of a weaker start compared to the other acts, but when those moments hit later on in Act 2, they hit hard. Act 2 is the turning point and I absolutely loved it, especially the new characters that are introduced and the twists were great. I also love that you can see some subtle foreshadowing as early as the start of Act 1, so it's crazy seeing these hidden details on a second playthrough. It adds value to replaying the game, seeing these crazy details as to why certain events happen later on in the game as early as the first few hours of the game. I think it's amazing. It almost reminds me of the whole Attack on Titan foreshadowing thing with the earlier seasons, the flashbacks and stuff like that, foreshadowing later things that happen on in the later seasons. It's an awesome way of storytelling and I love it. It adds so much value to replaying the game, and if you're really good at looking at details, you can even spot it before you even know what's going to happen. And finally, Act 3. Now the story itself in Act 3 is phenomenal, but what isn't great is the pacing. It's less of a chapter and more of a final mission with a bunch of side content. It's more like Act 2 Part 2, because yes, it is the finale, but it's not long enough story-wise for it to be called an act. I would call it the epilogue or just finale chapter. It felt directionless, because I felt that there was a lot of optional pieces of content you unlock in Act 3 that are really important to the story, and because it's optional content, you may miss out on this content if you head straight to the story objective. Even if you can go back at any time, I do believe that they should have included the main story. These activities and side content pieces should be included in the main story, rather than them just being optional content, because it made it feel disconnected, especially to the endings. It doesn't really make too much sense, to be honest. However, the story itself in Act 3 is amazing despite this. It's a great climax to an insanely good story, and while those endings hit hard and made me cry my ass off. Overall, Expedition 33 has a truly legendary story, one that is so well written I was left speechless. However, it does have its flaws. The pacing in the final chapter is off, and I disagreed with some of the story moments, though I did believe those moments paid off in the end. Despite my disagreements with some of the story direction, they did explain some of those plot points, and it all paid off in the end. I found myself completely in love with the story and its direction and why they made those certain decisions in the end. I also believe, though, that the side content, some of it should have been treated as main story content, as some of these pieces of content are really important to understand the overall game and the endings. However, this does add value to them in another way, because it means once you beat the game, you can reload your save and go back to complete those side tasks to get a better grasp on the plot and its secrets. So it depends on if you're a player that wants a complete story in your first playthrough and then complete the rest of the side tasks, or if you're the type of person who wants to have unanswered questions on your first playthrough and then go through on the side content and then answer all of those questions. I don't think this is a bad thing. It's just personally not for me, and it could not be for you either, and it could be for you. It just really depends. So let's get into our next topic, the gameplay. If I had to describe the combat in Expedition 33 in one word, I'd say revolutionary, because it completely changes the turn-based combat system in many ways. It uses aspects from classic RPGs like The Legend of Dragoon with its quick time events during combat. It uses a classic free-party member system, just like some old-school RPGs, and it also uses mechanics like parrying and dodging, like Onimusha, but completely reinvents these mechanics. It combines both classic turn-based mechanics with new modern features to craft probably the best turn-based system I've seen in years, maybe even my whole life. And there's no recency bias either. The combat is almost flawless, so let's get into my full thoughts. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier during the prologue, you have access to some optional activities that are actually just ways of introducing you to the game's combat mechanics, like a combat tutorial at the beginning of the game, disguised as a training session. This is pretty stereotypical for RPGs, but I like the way they introduce it so early on in the game, as an optional thing. Or a dodging tutorial used as a way to simulate dance. It's a really cool way of doing it, and there's many more, but I believe this is a great way to ease new players into the game, as well as newcomers to the turn-based genre. It gets them used to these mechanics, whilst also not forcing it on them. They don't have to do it if you just want to go into things blind, but if you want to prepare before you go on your main mission and you start fighting enemies, you can do these. But what about the combat itself? The combat in this game is both fun and challenging. On my first playthrough I played on normal mode, and on my second playthrough I started from scratch on extreme difficulty, and I have to say the difference is very clear between each difficulty. Normal mode still offers some challenge, but you can still build your characters correctly and you'll be fine. However, on extreme mode, even if you have a decent character build, for a majority of the story content, it can be quite challenging even early on, especially with the optional areas you can go to between Acts 1, Acts 2, and even Act 3 with the endgame content. However, once you stop using the dodge ability and master parrying, you'll be absolutely fine. I'd say the parrying in this game is comparable to a rhythm game. To master parrying, don't parry as you see an enemy come at you with their attacks. Even if this may work for you sometimes, it's not a guarantee on your timing, as sometimes enemies can fake out attacks, which is both cool and annoying. I love it. Instead, listen out for sound cues, like an enemy's grunting, sword swipes, or environmental sound effects. Parry as you hear these sounds, or just as they fade away, and make sure you're parrying the right sounds, because obviously not every sound's going to be part of the attack. And sometimes you'll even have to parry attacks with your whole party, and you'll have to do an expedition counter attack, and you may even need to parry a couple of times in a row. And I love this system. I think it keeps you engaged, entertained, but not only that, it's something to learn and challenge yourself with. I want to add that the combat UI is excellent. It's simplistic and doesn't show you a bunch of overly complex menus that are overflowing. You have your aim button, your items menu, your skills menu, and your basic attack button. All of these into one nice clean layout that doesn't take up your whole screen and doesn't make you feel overwhelmed. I love how everything is laid out, and the fact that you can only have 6 skills equipped at a time is great. It means that your combat menu is not overflowing with too many skills, making things easier to understand and navigate. Next up is the QuickTime events. You activate these mostly from skills and they work like any usual QTEs, but they don't feel completely useless. If you hit them perfectly, your skills will become more effective. It's a simple system that adds to the combat engagement, making it feel surprisingly action focused, which really adds to the unique combat system. With a variety of skills comes a variety of different QTEs, and they may be easy, but they do add just that little touch of spice to your combos, making them feel even more satisfying and stylish. Each playable character comes with a different role in combat that can change depending on what equipment and skills they're using, but for the most part you want to build a character around their exclusive trait. As an example, Gustav has an exclusive overcharge ability, so you have to focus on building him to support that ability, making sure you can use it as efficiently as possible. There's also a character that has 3 combat stances and another that focuses on consuming skills. The point is, each character has their own playstyle that feels different from each other, making it easier to find out what characters you want to play in your party and what playstyles suit you. Overall, I find the combat highly enjoyable. It doesn't focus on too many things and it only focuses on what makes it unique, and it makes sure every single mechanic has its use without making the gameplay feel bloated. The action elements are a great addition that further enhance the combat, especially with the parrying and the QTEs, keeping you focused and engaged. I love the variety of different enemies, especially in the later areas of the game. The bosses can be challenging at times, especially when they hit a combo, but when you start to master the mechanics and find a specific build suited to you, you'll be absolutely fine and breezing through a majority of the content. We'll be adding to this topic later on when I speak about the character building and the equipment building, but for now let's get into the exploration and side activities. Expedition 33 is not an open world game, but it doesn't need to be because it succeeds at making the world feel so open and full. The exploration formula is very reminiscent of a classic RPG, using an open field with a top-down view, with a massive open field of environments but with tiny points of interest dotted around, just like an overworld in a classic RPG. Where your actual exploration comes in though is at these key points around the open field that are detailed and scaled down versions of important locations. Walk up to these key points and enter them just like a classic dungeon. Here you enter open instances of various sizes. These are your story locations and optional areas. Some are massive areas with lots of enemies dotted around and many items to find. Others are small but have many hidden secrets to find. Others exist as rest points like a town or gestural beaches for fun activities. All of these areas have their own vibe, and honestly none of them feel the same. They all have their own aesthetic and story to tell. Story areas are often much larger, with many areas that branch off, with so much to explore and find. I honestly love exploration in this game. It feels so nostalgic, but also gives you a completely new, fresh experience. And there's many of these instances that you can enter. The world map is more of a hub for these locations rather than being a part of the world, as most of the content takes place in these instant areas. However, there are still some cool things and secrets to find in the overworld too, like hidden bosses. However, there are a few flaws with the exploration. The first is that there's no maps in these locations. You have your world map, but that's different. The problem is that you may miss a lot of content because of this, especially when there's a lot of hidden loot that is important for you to find if you want to play the endgame content. We're expeditioners, you're telling me we don't map down each location we visit for the ones that come after. This makes it hard to remember what locations to revisit if you've missed an important item or if you want to clear all of the content. There's many puzzles and hidden bosses in each of these areas, well, mostly all of them, but the point is, you're going to miss out on a lot of content because of this. There's also no side quest markers. You have your main quest markers and it tells you where to go, but for side quests, you can't track them whatsoever. I just don't really see why they didn't implement a mini map for these locations that you could toggle on and off, because there is a button that pulls up this thing on your hood and it shows you how many elixirs you've got left, all of your stats and stuff like that. Why didn't they allow you to, you know, hold a button and then open up a mini map of the area that you're currently in? I don't know. And why is there no ability to track side quests? Now, side quests are pretty easy, they're not too hard, but there are a few that you need to go to multiple locations for, and the only way you can really track that, if you've forgotten, is going through like a guide and stuff, which is a little bit annoying. It should already be there for you in the game, because again, we're expeditioners, we should be noting these things down for the people that come after if we fail to kill the paintress. The point is, it just feels a little bit half-assed, I won't lie. Other than that though, I think the exploration is absolutely fine, the side missions are great, I love the puzzles, but now let's get into the absolutely painful side activities. Gestural beaches are areas that contain beach mini-games, and for the most part, these are very fun and the difficulty can vary. There's one based off of Only Up, and there's other that use similar mechanics inspired by other mini-games in other games. There are a few others that are also pretty fun, and they come with beach-themed rewards. I found all of these activities to be engaging. It's the perfect blend between fun, challenging, and frustrating, but in a perfectly janky classic PS2-like game way. However, there is one that stands out from the rest. It's the worst minigame ever created. One designed so poorly to the point where winning it is completely up to chance because of the dog shit hitboxes. And that's the volleyball platform minigame. This minigame sucks. The first two stages are relatively easy, but the final stage is awful. And I'm not alone in saying this. At first I thought it was a skill issue, but it turns out it's just a poorly designed minigame with terrible hitboxes where your timing doesn't fully matter when your hits don't even fully register. And again, I'm not alone on this, there's been a lot of complaints. I hope the devs can release a patch that fixes this broken shitty mess of a minigame that took so long to even beat. I thought it was required for the Platinum Trophy as well, so when I did beat it, it turns out I already unlocked that trophy, and that's on me. But at the same time, I thought, oh, this trophy says beat all of the beach mini games and then you'll get the trophy. Turns out I didn't need to do that. But the point is, mini games shouldn't be this hard to beat. The mechanics are really, really poorly designed. You have to basically hit these little things back at this platform. The only problem is you get hit 4 times, you die. But you have to make sure that you hit them, I think it's a total like 20-30 times to kill the other enemy. So basically you're completely outmatched, there's too many being thrown at you at the same time, and the only way to really beat it is if you get a better run. Basically, if they're spawning in the direction that you're currently at, you're going to win. It's all up to chance, and I think it's awful. As for the rest of the side activities, you have a couple of side quests to do. Some of these are pretty fun, I won't lie. There's things like fetch quests, trivia, and some involve puzzles. There's a lot of variety in these side quests, but the fact that you cannot track these side quests or even see what ones are still active is a little annoying, but overall doesn't matter too much unless you're going for that 100% completion. In that case, go look up a guide. It's your only way of really tracking what you haven't done yet. There is also a lot of endgame content which is highly challenging and enjoyable, which unlocks during the final act. However, some of these side activities, like I said before, should have been involved with the main story, as it feels really weird completing them only for there to be no link to the main story within them, despite them being so important to the overall plot. It feels off when they don't even affect dialogue in the final chapter. Even so, the endgame is brilliant. It's something that most single-player, non-live service games are missing, and I think there's a lot of challenge to be had within this. You can have a broken build and completely cheese the content, which I'm not too much of a fan of, and there's one boss in specific that is maybe a bit too hard for most players, I won't lie, and most players have only their only option is to make a broken build to cheese this final secret boss, and it sucks, it does, I won't lie, but for the most part the end game is great. There's a lot of little modes to do, there's a lot of hidden bosses to do, some side quests, and there's a lot that you unlock in the end game. I also like the fact that you can only go past 9,999 damage in Act 3, so the gameplay loop was really different, as in the previous acts you cannot do more than 9,999 damage at a time unless you're on a new game plus route. It's honestly a great way of doing things. If you can't surpass a certain amount of damage in the early game, it means you don't cheese the easier content at the start of the game. It means you can't just rush through on your first playthrough, and I think that's great because that's a big problem I see in most modern RPGs, is the content's way too easy and they don't balance anything. It's either way too easy or way too hard, but I think this makes it so you can build your characters to their maximum potential in these acts, and then when you get to Act 3, that's where the true hard content starts, and you have to change around your builds, try out new weapons, new skills, and things like that. It's great, and I love it. Now, originally we're going to have a equipment and skills section, but unfortunately due to time constraints and I'm not feeling the best, I'll be going over it very quickly with some of my thoughts. I think the character building system is great. There's a ton of variety for what pictos to use on each unit, and you can really just make any build you want and whatever suits you. However, the UI is a little bit too complicated. I felt overwhelmed at first because I didn't like that the Lumina tab was so spaced out from the other equipment menus, and I didn't even know it existed until I got to the end of Act 1. However, building a character itself isn't very complicated. You just need to find the right pictos and weapon for yourself, plan out what skills to use, what luminas to equip, and what points you need, whether it's 99 agility or anything of the sort. I did like building my characters and I found it quite straightforward. However, again, the menus are a bit too spaced out for me, and a lot of people didn't even figure out that luminas were a thing until Act 1, and some didn't even know until the end of the game, which means they were basically playing on ultimate Dark Souls mode. I have no idea how they played the game, but whatever. It's a bit of a weird system where the system itself isn't complicated, but the menus make it seem like it is. It's a bit misleading, and I'm not too much of a fan of it. Okay guys, because we're reaching the end of the review, let's just go over a few of my minor complaints. First of all, there's no minimap, which makes it hard to track where you're going in instance areas. There may be a main world map, but there's no way to track where you're going or know where to go from when you're in a instanced area. There's no side quest markers, which also makes it hard to track what side quests are active or where to go. There's no bestiary, which makes it hard to track what enemies you have already beaten. This would also have been a great thing to remember what weaknesses enemies have, so you know what equipment to use. There's this awful volleyball minigame. I'm not even going to mention the real name of it because I hate it that much. There's also this really weird thing with the text box where if you're selecting dialogue options, sometimes it would move directly to the first dialogue option, even if you had already moved to like the second or third one, which means you might accidentally click the wrong option. Romance options also have no impact on the story, and it doesn't really make sense with the final decisions of the story and how you become, how the main character turns out. I don't really like this, I won't lie, and it doesn't really have any impact on the story. It's not too much of a big deal, but I feel like there should have been like an alternative ending depending on your choices. Sometimes music was also cut out. This would be in battle or even on the field. Music would just cut out randomly. This wasn't a common thing, but it did happen. I also thought some side content should have at least been main story content, or at least marked on the map as optional but important, because there's a lot of content you could miss on your first playthrough or whatever if you don't even play it the second time. That is really important to understand the ending and the plot. It's something that a lot of players probably would have missed out on unless they've already been told by someone else to go back and do them, because this is probably some of the best content in the game, but it's treated so much as optional endgame content that you can miss it easily. Now let's get into the soundtrack. Now there's a reason why the last topic of this review is the soundtrack and art, and that's because the OST in this game is pure perfection. It's a true 10 out of 10 soundtrack that surpassed every single one of my expectations, composed beautifully by Lorien Testard, which by the way, this soundtrack is his debut OST. He was a SoundCloud artist before this, and he's probably going to win many awards for his work here, rightly so, and that to me is insane. We have truly found some rare, raw talent here, and passion from a brilliant mind. He's perfectly crafted an emotional soundtrack The lyrics of each song reflect the meaning of this game. The instrumentals are beautiful. The range in this soundtrack is insane. You've got jazz tracks, you've got extraordinary, beautiful, you've got emotional tracks, and a shout out to both Asus Tuf and Victor Borba for their powerful and beautiful voices with so much soul and emotion. I won't say anything more about the soundtrack because I'm speechless. As a massive music person, the OST really speaks to me and made me feel so much. So credit to everyone who worked on the soundtrack for this game, making true art. And without any words, let me show you the true beauty of this soundtrack. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 shocked me in every single way possible, and it truly needs to win Game of the Year. Its emotional storytelling doesn't hold back and sucks you right into the narrative of this game. It's got such a genius concept and meaning behind it that will stick with me. It's a brilliant narrative. The character writing is amazing, with each character feeling so real. They all have emotions and they feel so expressive. Gustav is a socially awkward main character, and that truly makes him lovable and relatable. He's so well written, he's already one of my favourite protagonists of all time. Each and every character has their charms, and I don't believe a single important character is overshadowed or feels left out. The combat is revolutionary and has brought many new fans into the turn-based genre, even haters of the genre, and rightly so. The combat is amazing, it has little to no flaws, and even though the endgame scaling could have been a bit better, in the end the combat is still phenomenal and fixes almost every single problem I've had with turn-based games, even as a massive fan of the genre. The art direction is stunning, and I love the way that it also ties into the narrative. It's pure genius. The music is insane, it's incredible, and made me feel so many emotions, and I know it affected many other people. So thank you Lorien, thank you Alice and Victor, as well as anyone else who worked on this phenomenal soundtrack. And though the game has its flaws, they don't really affect the overall quality of the game. Sure, some parts may be annoying and a mess, but if the quality of a product is so high you can look past them, then why hate it? Sandfall Interactive have made something special here, and let it be a letter to every indie developer out there. We see you, you are heard, and I know you can make something truly beautiful, so don't give up. And AAA studios are dying for the most part. It's no longer about the fans or creating something that leaves a mark on people. It's just about meeting sales expectations and getting as much money out of a product as you possibly can, without a care in the world about true talent and making a product that people can care about. And it just blows my mind that a team of 30 made something this amazing. It does go to show that if you have dreams, ideas, and a concept, you can make something as exceptional as this. All you need is passion and a great team that works together with respect and love for their work. Of course, it's a lot of hard work, but these devs, they put their mind to it and pushed forward and created one of the greatest games of all time. So I'll be giving Clair Obscur Expedition 33 100% on the Rev scoreboard for its take on the cycle of life and death, for its exceptional combat, and for every single aspect that has been perfectly crafted to make such a beautiful experience. And yes, this will be our new rating system from now on. I apologise for the overall quality and delay on this video. I've been struggling a lot lately with mental health, so I'll be taking a short break after this video so I can focus on other things. And when I come back to YouTube with a healthier mindset, I can make higher quality reviews for you guys. There may be the odd video or two uploaded every now and then between that period, but for now, this will be my last review for the next few weeks. But expect some much more laid back content in between then, just to keep this channel active and to keep you guys updated. But as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you didn't, let me know in the comments if you have any feedback. And I'll be seeing you in the next expedition for those who come after.